Okay, are we ready to get started? Okay.
Sorry, we have Claude and Sherry on Zoom.
Oh, Claude and Sherry are both on Zoom?
Yes.
Wow, we got everybody here then. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to have invocation by Commissioner Seth and then a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Chris.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads humbly before Thee tonight and express our gratitude unto Thee for the great blessings that we enjoy in our lives. We're grateful for this beautiful place in which we live and grateful to have so much despite the difficult times that many are experiencing right now. We pray for them. We pray for the members of our community, those who are in need, and for opportunities to help and to serve them. We pray for wisdom and for Thy inspiration as we attend to our duties this evening and throughout the coming weeks and months and years. We love Thee and pray these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right, first, we're going to have the opening statement by anybody who wishes to address the Planning Commission that's not on the agenda. We just ask that you state your name and where you live, and these aren't anything that we do actions on, but it's your opportunity to present, talk to the Planning Commission.
We have no one on Zoom and no one on YouTube Live.
Okay. All right, I will turn the time over to Rob Patterson, our city attorney.
Thank you. I'm Rob Patterson. Pleasure to be with you all. I promised Chris that I would spend a good 40 minutes reading every line of the Open Public Meetings Act to you. So here we go. I handed out a sheet. Utah law requires that public bodies go through an open public meetings training. Fortunately for you, there's not much that you need to remember. You have wonderful staff here at Highland that will handle all the details of the notices and the agendas and all of that. What you need to remember is the broad purpose of the Open Public Meetings Act is to take your actions openly, conduct your deliberations openly. So that means part of a public meeting that has been properly agendized. You're taking final actions only on things that are on an agenda item that has been properly posted. If there's ever a reason for you to go into closed session, doesn't really come up often for Planning Commission. There's certain reasons you can do that. You hold a vote and you go into closed session. Anytime there are 4 or more of you together, that is a potential meeting. So that's the thing to keep in mind. If 4 of you are meeting, talking about public business, you should probably have an agenda. You should probably get it noticed up. Talk to city staff before you do that. Other than that, that is the basics of open public meetings. It's you hold a meeting and you hold it openly. Any questions? Fantastic. If you do have any questions, Highland City staff, we're all available, happy to answer it. It's not too difficult though. You just hold your open meetings.
Hey Rob, why don't you go over the 30-second grandma as it relates to them, emails, stuff like that.
Oh, sure. So not directly Open Public Meetings Act, but part of the kind of policy behind open government is GRAMA, the Government Records Access Management Act. That just means that most of your records that you produce, your emails, documents that are provided to you, possibly even text communications, those are all public records that the public could request. So with that, when you get emails, just be aware that everything you send is a public record. And we might ask you at some point, if someone files a request, to go through whatever email account you've been using for public business. This is why we encourage you to not use non-city emails for city business. Otherwise, we'll have to go through your personal email to make sure we find all relevant records, We don't want to do that. You don't want us to do that. So make sure you limit your records to those that the city has access to and can control and manage. Yeah.
Does the city have some sort of electronic records retention policy? A lot of companies that I've worked at, every 30 days, whether you like it or not, they'll just automatically delete emails or not.
We technically do have a records retention policy. I believe it is mostly just we retain them, as part of your emails. We don't have there are schedules that we have that the states have adopted that we've also adopted regarding, certain records are deleted. Transitory records like texts are generally kept for 1 to 2 weeks and then wiped. Same, emails last longer. Certain records last forever, like all of your meeting minutes and things like that nature. I don't know exactly what the city's kind of IT policy is. I'm not part of that, but I know there is a records retention schedule.
Rob, quick question. I'm assuming that everything is backed up somewhere, so we can delete things, right, out of our email?
Yeah, they're backed up on a server.
Okay.
But you don't want to be caught with the email that says, I don't like Commissioner Wright because she colored her hair purple. You don't want to say something like that.
Great. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. We're available. We want to make sure we do things right.
All right. Number 3, consent items. Are we approving the minutes from January 26th?
Yeah, sorry, we're changing the order a little bit on the agendas just to match it more with the way council does their agendas, just to make it easier. So yes, it will be for the approval of the minutes.
Okay, that's usually, I thought was at the end. All right. So we're going to go ahead and approve those city amendments. Do I have a...
I move that we approve the minutes for the January 26th council meeting.
I second that motion.
And do we need to do a roll count or just say aye?
You don't need a roll call for this.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Claude is on full volume. We're hearing you loud and clear. All right, item number 4, public hearing ordinance, text amendment, storage facility in the professional office zone. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing to consider a request by Isaac Patterson to amend section 3-4929 in the development code related to the storage facility in the professional office zone. And I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Like Commissioner Abbott said, this is a request by Isaac Patterson for a text amendment in the PO zone. Just a little bit of background, the PO zone was adopted back in 2003. The purpose of it was to accommodate storage facilities, or the storage facility, and a number of office buildings just in that area. It's just up, I'll show a vicinity map in a second, just up by Highland Boulevard. And the applicant's property does include the Highlands Hideaway Storage and as well as the Highland Business Park. This is the affected lot. I should have edited that, but it's just, this is the Highland Hideaway Storage. Highland Boulevard's right there, just south of it. So the text amendment, if you saw in the exhibits or the attachments, we have our conditional uses and our prohibited uses, and then, so a conditional use / permitted use for the PO zone. Every permitted use is a conditional use for the PO zone, just want to point that out. And one of the conditional uses is storage facilities, and then we have an entire section, it's the last section in the PO zone, that's dedicated entirely to explaining what is allowed in storage facilities. So that text, this text amendment is changing just that section allowing for the leasing of moving vehicles in this storage facility in Highland Hideaway Storage. And the regulations with the allowing of leasing of moving vehicles is allowing 2 vehicles to be outside, like visible, and then allowing up to 6 moving vehicles that are hidden or in a structure. He used similar wording to what we require for boats and trailers in the storage facilities, which was just saying that it's under a covered structure, like a roofing. It doesn't have to necessarily have walls, but it's just covered on top and then just back and out of sight, like away from street view. This is just examples. These are some Penske truck rentals. And then we as staff have just concluded that this does have limited impact, if any impact. And then, like I said, it's similar to the existing requirements for boats and trailers. And we sent out the required notices for this as a public hearing, as well as the required noticing for this just as the Planning Commission meeting. And we as staff recommend that the Planning Commission conduct that public hearing, discuss the issues, and recommend approval to the City Council of this proposed amendment. And Isaac Patterson, as well as the representative for Penske, is also present if you have any questions for them.
So just to be clear, is this going to happen in the storage unit area or where those new office buildings are?
Just in the storage unit area.
All right, made a big difference.
Yeah.
So some of the trucks will be stored inside some of those storage facilities, or are they building another like place to house those trucks?
We'll build another structure.
Okay. So that'll all be together in
Yeah,
that.
just for the record, when you speak, if you could go up to the mic, but yeah, that would be great. Just state your name.
Part of the Open Public Meetings Act is that all our meetings are recorded.
Perfect, sorry about that. I am Isaac Patterson. So Commissioner Abbott, to respond to your question, we will do covered parking. It's behind, there's a designated spot. I don't know if you have that map
Yeah,
that we can show, but it would be covered parking, and it's behind the existing storage. So very much out of sight and still covered.
So it's not in those new buildings?
Correct.
That's what I was trying to clarify. Okay.
Correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
And just one question too, in the documentation, it talked about having 2 of those potentially stored like in the front where I assume some of your parking is. It's been a while since I've been to that facility, probably a few years, but
Yes.
if there were 2 trucks parked there, is there space for those? Do you have plans to put those also outside in the front?
So there will be some space. Make sure I'm not talking too loud. There will be space. It's on the north side of the existing road. We'll pave for 2. We'll have a pavement for 2 parking stalls there. And really what they are is they're for overnight or for the daily rental. So if we don't have any active rentals that day or people returning the vehicles, they'll be unoccupied. The primary purpose is just to make sure that overnight parking is available for return and pickups.
Awesome, thanks.
All right, let's go ahead and open it up for public comment, and then we'll discuss it. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to address the Planning Commission on this issue?
If you're on YouTube Live, you can just message me and I'll be able to see it in the chat. And we have no one on Zoom. 1, 2, 3. Okay, no one on YouTube Live.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and start with Tyler. Do you have any comments?
No, that was the only one I had there. I think he answered that well.
Okay, Seth?
No, I've got nothing.
Audrey?
And I just had a question about it. Is this a rental just for those storing within your facility?
So, yeah, this would be for the general public.
It's for the general public, not just for those who are storing at Hideaway Storage?
That is correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Hey, Mino?
No, I'm good. I was pulling the zoning map, so that section in which occurs, in which the gentleman probably is building right now, that's a different zoning right now? So the PO zone, it's in the back in unit, but they're building right at the edge of the Highland Boulevard. Is that a different
Just
zone?
south of here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you saw a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so, that's a different zone. I was trying to pull
Yes,
the map.
it's
Okay,
different.
thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, so what we're approving would just apply to being connected to the storage units, right?
Yes.
Okay. Chris? All right, Claude, do you have any comments? And Sherry?
No, I don't think.
Okay, then we'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the proposed amendment to the permitted uses in storage facilities in the PO zone. Do we have any findings? Okay, based on the findings in the report. Is that good enough?
Okay, Tyler?
Yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Okay, just a second. Can somebody mute that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
Yes.
Claude? And Sherry?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and I'm a yes. All right, item number 5, public hearing ordinance general plan amendment, neighborhood option trail. Planning Commission will hold the public hearing, and this is in regards to the general plan to reclassifying neighborhood option trails in the Trails Master Plan to neighborhood trails. And we'll turn the time over to...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. This is a general plan amendment request by the City Council. The general plan was adopted back in 2008. We've had a couple updates since then, but not like an overall change really. And part of that general plan was the Trails Master Plan, and it included 6 trail classifications. And 2 of these were just, one is neighborhood trails, and then there's neighborhood option trails. And that was created in 2013, and the intent was to allow open space subdivisions to be able to remove trails, or just remove it and allow them the option to buy it without having to go through this general plan amendment process where we have to have public hearing at Planning Commission, City Council, and going through all of the public process, just making it easier for the city and for the residents. And since then, it has had quite a history of just, y'all are very well aware of the controversy of just what comes with neighborhood option trails. And because of that, the council has found it beneficial for us to reclassify the neighborhood option trails back to neighborhood trails. This is our current Trails Master Plan. It's a little difficult to see, but you have the neighborhood option trails that are in that golden yellow color, and then the neighborhood trails in brown, which were just the ones that the city decided that we needed to keep, whether we had utilities under them or whatever it may be. And then this is the updated, all the yellow just turns brown, and we just get rid of that classification, and now they are neighborhood trails. And again, so this amendment would make it so we would need to go through that process if we did end up removing a trail. And the citizen participation, we went through the appropriate public hearing noticing 14 days before this meeting, as well as our Planning Commission noticing over the weekend. And we as staff recommend that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing here and recommend approval to the council of their request for the proposed general plan amendment.
So was the problem before, if I remember right, some of these trails were being sold and the public felt they didn't have enough involvement to stop it or say it didn't need to go. Does this make it,
Nathan's gonna.
does this force it to go through that public process, or before it was
No,
too
there-
easy to sell them?
There was a public process before that they went through where they did neighborhood petitions and so forth. And the councils made the decision not to sell any paved trails. And so to implement that decision, we need to change the general plan to get rid of the option trails and just make them all neighborhood trails. And so that's what
all
this
our
does.
trails.
So we can still sell some of those that aren't paved and aren't going to ever
Correct.
be used? Or,
If we have a trail corridor that we're never going to use, that's an option to dispose. But if there is a paved trail, then we won't dispose of that.
okay.
So if there is a proposed trail, is the Highland Council, City Council looking more towards keeping that in the plan to accomplish those trails, or are we eliminating the progress of further trails?
So if there's a proposed trail on the map, I believe they want to construct those trails.
Yeah.
If there's a trail corridor that exists that is not going to be used as a future trail, though that's what they're talking about. This doesn't eliminate anybody coming before the commission and council and saying, hey, we want to remove this section of the trail, but they have another process to go through without just being automatically doing it through a petition through the neighborhood. That's what this does.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open up for public comment on this agenda item number 5. Do we have anybody online?
There is no one online.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any comments from commissioners or questions?
I've got a question. So one of the most controversial neighborhoods has been Wimbledon. And I feel like there's still a referendum open on that. How would this affect that?
So this doesn't affect a referendum at all. There's two paths, right? So let's assume for a second that if the referendum failed, okay, then the council action remains valid and it can proceed. If the referendum is successful, then the trails remain. Those are the two things. This doesn't affect that particular action.
Were those neighborhood option trails?
They were.
Okay. And so just so that I understand exactly what we're doing here, so what would be the difference if those are now switched to neighborhood trails, if nothing had been done in the past, but previously they had a petition that went around the neighborhood that got signed. They brought it to city council. But my understanding is that if it's a neighborhood option trail, that they didn't need to come to city council.
No, so with the neighborhood option trail option, and I didn't know how else to say that. It sounds kind of weird. It allowed subdivisions to petition the city council through a petition process to remove and sell those trails and the property underneath them.
Yeah.
What the council has made a decision that they're not going to accept those petitions any longer.
Okay.
And
So it
this-
wasn't automatic, it still had to be.
wasn't automatic.
Okay,
No,
all right. So now there's just not going to be a petition.
correct.
And so if a neighborhood wants to dispose of trails, then the process would now be,
Now they're city trails, and so now you have to go through a general plan amendment that comes before the planning commission and city council. And you're
Okay.
inviting the entire city to be part of the process.
okay,
So it's not as simple.
It's not as simple,
yeah.
and
Not
you're
that was
involved,
simple.
no, and you're
before.
involving more than just the subdivision, you're involving
Yeah.
the city. So
I like that.
realistically, they're changing the policy and saying, we're not interested in selling these any longer. We want to keep the trails.
I like that. Along with that, has there been any discussion about changing the fee structure?
Not formally, no.
Okay. Maybe a topic for another day.
Yeah, you need to talk to the council about that one.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, we'll entertain
Can I ask a question?
yes.
So, why the city council want this done?
It's Sherry, but.
Sorry, Sherry, can you say that again?
Or why is city council asking for this?
Because they made the decision not to sell and abandoned trails anymore.
Okay.
Not without a lot of participation from the city, right?
Right.
Okay.
This is Rob. If I could just add a quick comment. The city council already changed the ordinance that allowed that petition process. So right now, the neighborhood option category doesn't mean anything. So this would just standardize it, so it's just, you have trails.
Well, that made it a lot easier. All right, do we have a motion? Can you put, yeah, there you go.
Yes, I move that the Planning Commission accept the findings and recommend approval of the proposed general plan amendment to reclassify neighborhood option trails to neighborhood trails in the Trails Master Plan.
I second the motion.
Tyler?
Yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Audrey?
Yes.
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 Sherry?
Yes.
Claude?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Right, item number 6, shipping containers.
Okay, we didn't have a report for this one. We did want it to make it more of a discussion because we have entertained the idea of a text amendment, but wanted to come forward to y'all and get any recommendations that you, just some direction as to what you would like staff to do. So definition of a shipping container, this is what Rob came up with a few months ago, he may not remember, but a reusable container designed for intermodal freight transportation. These are a couple pictures of a shipping container that is on a lot in Highland. And here are a couple other pictures, just two sides on the same lot. Basically, Erin, she's been taking over code enforcement for me while I'm still getting used to things with this job. But she gets questions about shipping containers and whether or not they're allowed, she said, at least once a week. And she's gotten a couple, there are a couple cases in code enforcement that have been submitted, but it's always kind of coupled with something else. But basically, when it comes to our code, we have nothing that enforces anything about shipping containers. When it comes to accessory structures, it's only considered an accessory structure if it's 200 square feet or more, and these are smaller. And so, like, also when it comes to them being on the easements, it's just because it's temporary and it's movable, again, we can't really enforce anything. Or our code doesn't enforce anything about it. So these are just a couple discussion items or questions or ideas that we could have, is if there could be some sort of time limit for how long people have shipping containers on their yards, or if it's within the front setback or on their driveway, if that time limit would be shorter, or if it's behind and not visible, if we would even consider having a time limit. And also just if we limited how many we can have on a lot, or if there are square footage requirements to have some, and then also location requirements if we don't want them in the front setback at all, or if we just want them outside of the 10-foot PUEs. Just, yeah, if y'all could discuss it and then maybe come to a couple ideas or some conclusions that can help us kind of figure out what to do.
I've got a question. Have we looked through any CCRs in different subdivisions to see if there's already something in the CCRs? So
that's the thing, is we don't affiliate with, like CCNRs and HOAs, we can't enforce those rules, and so,
Right.
I mean, I guess if it was part of some.
Just
like,
for ideas. I mean.
Yeah, we don't have record of CCNRs or HOA requirements.
Oh, they're not filed with the city
No.
at all? Oh.
They used to be in the past, but because they're not,
They're recorded, they're recorded,
Yeah, okay.
Right.
yeah. But for me, I mean, that's where I think that's policed is in the CCNRs. Like in our
For the
neighborhood, you
shipping
can't put
containers.
any shipping
Yeah.
containers anywhere, you can't. It has to go through a DRC approval and, you know,
Right.
'cause it sounds to me like it's unsightly. One of the ideas though, because if people place them on easements,
right?
I think if they're on an easement, they should be readily movable, not just movable. In other words, if you want to put a shipping container on an easement, it needs to have the wheels on it.
Okay.
So that if our crews have to get there and get through there, they can hook that thing and move it, not have to go get a special forklift to lift this thing if it's not overly loaded to begin with.
I like that.
And I don't think, I mean, not putting in the front setback, I think is a reasonable general thing to say. You'd think most people would put them towards the back. But, I mean, we have people that use them in our neighborhood, but they use them as retaining walls where they put them into a hillside and then bury them, and then they have the doors where they can get in them. But like the picture she showed where they're just out in the front and just lining the property, you know, I don't, you know, there should
Can
be
we-
some restriction there. To me, movable is, it can be moved right then. Once you lay it on the ground, I think you've pretty much created a kind of a structure there, but.
There's that issue of it on utility access, where utilities might need to be there for a neighbor or so, and they can't get to it.
Yeah.
So do we know what type of usage some of the residents are renting or buying this for? Because to his comment, if I can dig a hole big enough and I can sit against my property line, technically it's not easily removable anymore, and I can
Right.
make an argument that I use it for storage, but my neighbors still be able to see it and might not be satisfied. So do we know what they use it for? Is it permanent storage or it's temporary storage?
I feel like there are different uses across the city.
Okay.
They use them for shops, they use them for storage.
Nuclear bunker?
Yeah,
I'm going to use mine for a mother-in-law suite.
yes, yeah.
So I was-
That one's not allowed.
Oh, is that not going to fly?
That
Okay.
makes you a bad son-in-law.
All right.
I didn't mention about the 200 square foot limitation, right? Because otherwise you have to submit a permit for, so I was searching, I was Googling just standard size of this container because they're pretty big, right? And
45 feet.
yeah, they're 45 by 8, so you're above that 200. So technically, yeah, you're 300, right? So technically, you are above that 200 mark, and therefore you can leverage that ordinance already potentially. If are the 45 by
Well, they're
8.
20, 40, 20 and 40 are the most common ones.
Yeah.
And then you get 45 HQs as well.
I think the argument is they're considered a trailer, not a
It's not,
structure.
it's movable, yeah, it's not a
I
permanent.
mean,
It's just like when you have your toy haulers, those can get pretty big. Do those fall into that?
yeah,
classification.
my opinion is I think they're ugly. They belong in a shipping yard, and I don't see, like, why do we need to even tolerate them?
They're kind of cool.
I make a living out of shipping containers, but I would prefer
If you
not
got-
to have them.
If you got 2 acres, you could lose one of those in the back pretty easily. No. I think the HOAs can manage the aesthetic side of it. I think as a city, we should manage, at least my opinion is, the easement issue.
So do any of these affect the large construction dumpsters? No one's complaining about that. They're not including this into that.
Those are usually
If people are doing
temporary.
construction and it's next to the road, next to an easement in the front for easy access for the contractor, that's not part of the discussion?
No, because those are temporary, right? Because they're, right, a house is under construction or something?
Right.
No, I mean, the challenge with these is, in some areas, you don't have active HOAs, and so,
Most
Which is the one I
areas, yeah.
picked, and I'm very pleased about it.
yeah. So like Bull River, you're going to have a lot of restrictions and active HOAs to regulate them and things like that, and in other areas you're not. And so really the question becomes, do we want to permit them? And if so, and if the answer is yes, then what are the restrictions? Are they in the rear yard where nobody can see them? If you know the new swig that went by A-Fresh down by the Tabernacle, that's one they converted. It's a policy issue that you guys need to discuss and whether you want it. I mean, there's one right off of, drive by it every day, off of 74, Alpine Highway down, what subdivision is that? I don't know. Close to the AF pond on the east side of the road. It's right there. They use them for storage. I mean, you can get them cheaper than building. So,
Oh, yeah.
What about ordinance Alpine or American Fork has or Lehigh around this container?
so they all vary. You get some from, we're going to prohibit it, to you can have it for a certain amount of time. Rob, in your research, what'd you find?
Just as you're saying, I have cities that have taken hardline approaches. They don't allow it anywhere. You can only do accessory buildings that you build, not a storage unit. Some don't care as much. I don't know. And I haven't found a consistent pattern from any of my cities. Some of the rural ones say, yeah, it's fine. Some of them say, we hate the look of them. We don't want them anywhere in our city. So it's, what your feeling is.
I will tell you, one of those as a storage shed in the back is a lot better than one that's built because it's flat and low versus the peak that you have to put on a built one. And so maybe it's something that, like, I agree they shouldn't be in a front yard.
Yeah.
Which I don't think any HOA would approve that, but for the non-HOA, I definitely don't think they should be on easements, period. I don't even think if they're on wheels. They should just not be on easements. They shouldn't be in the setbacks, and they should be in the backyards.
Are any of them being used as tiny homes? Anyone doing remodels or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Just us.
Audrey.
I think once you run electrical to it, then you're pretty much having to go through the building department on that.
And maybe if they were actually being utilized as a temporary storage for moving or something, and they did need it in a front yard or driveway, that's where we could have a time limit set up of, yes, they could be there for, 10 to 14 days if someone's moving and using it for storage. But yeah, other than that, maybe in the front yard being prohibited. But maybe some flexibility for a short time.
Yeah, because they have those companies that bring those pods.
Yeah, pods.
Right, yeah.
Those are usually pretty temporary because you're paying.
A little smaller, too.
You're paying for the time on that.
Right.
So you're just looking for ideas? Is that what you're looking for? Or are we
Well,
trying
we're
to-
looking for direction.
We gotta
Is this-
come up with
Is this an issue in the city that you see? Is this something you want us to address? If so, how would you like us to address it?
How did it get
complaints?
brought up? How did it get brought up?
Because Erin, who deals with our code
Oh,
enforcement right now, said
questions,
she
yeah.
gets questions at least
So
once a week.
She's not necessarily getting complaints. She's getting
Well,
just,
There are more so people looking to file a complaint, but are asking if it's allowed. And she's like, well, in our code, it's not something that we can enforce really.
okay.
So the
okay.
complaints aren't filed because they're told that we can't enforce it.
But there are people who don't like having them. and,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I just don't
go
want to get caught up into telling people they can't have cars parked in front of their
Yeah.
homes for long periods.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I generally, in general, don't like the idea of banning people from having things on their property if it's not dangerous. So I like what Jerry was saying about, reasonable. It's not in the front yard, it's not on the driveway, it's not, it respects the setbacks. And I like that it can't be on an easement, because if we say that it can be on an easement, but it has to be readily movable, how do you enforce that? And all of a sudden, somebody puts it on and fills it full of stuff.
I can't enforce that.
Yeah, so
So is this including pods or not?
I think pods is it's a whole different thing. They're smaller.
That's more of a commercial.
Yeah, and they're meant to be picked up and moved.
And it has to be on a driveway, basically.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
would have to be in the front yard.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a different category than the full-out shipping containers.
Okay.
So
Which
that's how
we
you
also
feel about-
could include simply because we don't have a single section about shipping containers. So we would be adding a section about shipping containers.
Yeah. I don't mind having a time limit for even the pod type things, because those are fairly unsightly too, and if somebody's just got it sitting there in the driveway for 6 months, it's not fun to look at.
And then would you limit this to residential zone and allow into commercial? Because I do see people sometimes they do some of those coffee shop, right, run by in Salt Lake County. There are a few of them that are ship containment converting to, or once like Abbott was saying, once I apply the electric and whatnot, it becomes a permitted unit, and therefore I have to go through the process.
Right.
How's that work?
Yeah, I think those
At
coffee
least-
shops would have to come in for a permit in the whole 9 yards, right?
Yes, because it would have to go through a site plan. Anything on a commercial lot would have to go through site plan. But I mean, the complaints are all in residential zones.
We probably don't, you said the complaints aren't filed because we don't have that, so we don't really know if it's 20 complaints about one storage thing versus 20 complaints about 20 different storage ones.
I had a conversation with Erin about it yesterday, and she made it seem like it was from several different people. I've received 2 calls, but it was more people just asking if they could have a shipping container on it.
They didn't give a location?
No.
I think the harder thing to address is, like, let's say on a corner lot that's unfenced, and so they're in the backyard, but they're very visible still. And so it's meeting the setback thing, it's meeting, it's not on an easement, but so maybe a limit of how many is worth talking about. You're not having just, a whole lot
I
filled with
also,
them.
I wanted to ask just for a clarification, when you say like meeting setbacks, are you just saying meeting the front setback? Because an accessory structure, it has to follow the front setback but then from the sides and the rear, it's just outside of the 10-foot PUE, unless you're on a corner and then it's 20 feet in
Yeah.
from the lot line.
I feel like it should be
Because then they're tall enough they
any
can
and
block
all
windows.
setbacks.
Sorry, I couldn't understand
Go ahead,
both
go
at the
ahead.
same time.
I'm sorry, they're tall enough they can block windows in residential if you don't meet the side setbacks. So
So having like a 15-foot side setback, like the home.
Yeah, I would say that it would just meet the same requirements for all the setbacks, because nobody wants a shipping container right up against the fence, on their next door neighbor.
But can I ask you a question? Couldn't I just go get a auxiliary building permit and place that thing 5 feet from the back property line?
It can be 10 feet.
10 feet?
Uh-huh.
So even if we set it at 15, if they go through the permit process, they can push it back to the 10, right? If they're actually going through and saying I'm gonna put spot footings underneath this thing, I'm gonna make it an auxiliary building. I mean,
Yeah,
they're used for
my neighbor has
buildings.
them it's his welding
Houses, all
shop. He
kinds
goes
of
in there and he
things.
welds, and he can always shut the doors if he has to, if there's a
Right.
fire.
Some people use them as barns, instant ready barns.
So then you can kind of divide by user for permitted user X, and then you can perhaps have an ordinance about it needs to be looking X, Y, and Z color-wise, I don't know, appealing in the way at least for those surround, it doesn't look as bad. But then if it's for storage, or if it's just for temporarily, you might say it's allowed for X numbers of day.
Right. Which
wonder-
would also, it would be tough to enforce based on use, if I'm being honest.
I wonder too, Kelly, I think, Jerry, as you bring up, if you've got a 2-acre lot, it's much easier to hide one of these than if I've got a third of an acre lot. And so if we are talking about maybe limiting the numbers, maybe it's more of a ratio of like lot size to numbers. If I've got 4 acres, maybe I can have 4 of them. Just a thought in terms of what that might look like. I don't know if other people have
Similar
thoughts.
to large animals.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I would just encourage you as you're driving around, watch for them and you'll see them and see,
I will now, yeah.
yeah, and see if this is something you want.
I could just say, why don't we just have one per acre? These are problems, I'm going to get it, less obvious. So I'm gonna say one per acre.
So would you be prohibiting it from anyone that had less than 1 acre?
Yeah,
I would wipe out half your problem.
That's an idea.
there's one, explain to one that's strip mall.
People use them as strip malls, is that what you're saying?
So Nathan, is this something you want us to bang out right now, or just start thinking about it?
Yeah, so feel free to call me or email me with any other ideas or questions, or even pictures that you see that, or you can take some pictures and send them to me as just things that we can look more into.
I'm gonna start playing with my drone tomorrow, flying over.
Because it sounds to me
neighborhoods.
like the complaints you're getting aren't, hey, my neighbor has 5 of these things. It's sitting right next to my property, or it's in the front yard.
Yeah.
Right.
How does that work in turn? Like, I'm thinking of scenarios, you know, I've got a neighbor who has a trailer that is right, I mean, it's probably the size of one of these shipping containers that's 2 inches away from my fence. Not that I care from a complaint standpoint, but do we have some, you know, coding on that kind of stuff? Because some of these things tend to look really similar, and I don't, from my standpoint, there's really no difference between a shipping container that backs up there and someone's trailer that's, you know, I go into my backyard and I just see trailer, you know?
I know if something, like, if it becomes something that's just like unused and dirty and unsightly and kind of just seen as like junk on their driveway, we can send them a notice or a letter. But I mean, if it's this like brand new, beautiful
Yeah,
car
yeah.
that's been sitting on the driveway for 6 months, I don't think we're,
Yeah, I don't want to send a notice. I'm just thinking it's a very similar situation. If throughout the winter it sits there for 8 months and does not move from that position, you know, that's, I just wondered what we say about that kind of stuff. And if it might be similar to some of these things in terms of, you know, they can't park them in the front yard, they can't, you know, they can't be on the streets during specific times and things like that, right? And anyway.
It would be interesting to get some more detail from Aaron, maybe on the number, if it's really once a week.
right.
Um,
Which now that it's a discussion we're having, we'll definitely take more note of and get addresses and go out and take pictures when those come in, just because
Yeah.
it's just been a constant, like, sorry, we can't enforce anything, and then we don't get any more details on the matter. So,
Yeah, I think it would be wise to define the problem a little bit better before coming to
And
any-
maybe narrow down if it's the same group of people.
right, right.
Yeah, because once a week, that's somebody that has to go out, knock on the door, get them to move it. Code enforcement.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't want to become an HOA for the people that don't have HOAs. Because they have other remedies if they have to move the stuff. But I definitely agree there should be some protection on easements and maybe the front yard. But for me personally, I don't think I'd want to get too much deeper than that. And to be honest with you, when you get us the data, I bet you that solves most of it. Just get it out of the front yard and off, you know,
Off the
easements or property. Easements the key one for me, because those things could be loaded so heavy, even if they had to move it to access whatever's under there. And the weight alone could do something. Anyway. What's that?
Right.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Any other comments or thoughts? if you guys could, any thoughts that you get, or, maybe type it out in a little email and copy the planning commission and get it over to her, and then maybe we can start. But I think the data would be, I don't know if it's the same person every week, right?
Right, I agree,
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Or the same shipping container that multiple people are.
Nathan says it's not, he's shaking his head.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. I think they're cool. All right, planning commission staff communication items. Oh, is this where we just kind of, so we received an email from a lady that's suing us, right? The lady that said,
Oh,
and then you sent an email that said, hey, we're in litigation. So since we have our attorney here, when we get a lady like that, or a citizen like that, that starts going, I mean,
Packard's.
we don't want to start replying to those emails, is that right? Or,
Right. Once a matter is in litigation, I mean, obviously, when it's just a normal matter that comes up, staff, planning commission, council, we encourage everyone to, be friendly and helpful to residents as you can. But once they have threatened or have actually sued the city in some matter, at least related to that, we encourage you to not respond individually, because then we can sometimes send inconsistent messages representing the city. So forward those to Nathan and me, and we will handle it from there.
well, so the ones that are sent on the website to the entire planning commission, are those not filtered before they come? Because I wouldn't have known until Nathan sent something.
Nope.
And so if you get one of those, I mean, sometimes if it's just a comment like, hey, we've sued the city in the past, and you have a matter that's related to it that's coming up, I mean, obviously consider it as part of, whatever decision-making you're doing. Just be cautious in how you respond to it, so that we're, sending a consistent message.
Okay. And Nathan, do you have any updates on the new lake that's going in? Lehigh's Lake, or? Looks like
Besides
they're
that it's
getting
under
close.
construction, other than that, I don't know.
Because they said they were going to fill it this spring, right?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, I've heard that, they're trying to open it up for this summer, but other than that, I don't know enough. There's a Facebook group called Dry Creek Lake. I think they post updates on that. Kurt Osler would be your primary contact. He knows more about it than most of us.
Until February hit, they weren't going to be able to fill that lake. There was no snow. So,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
don't let the snow fool you. I was talking to irrigation guy today that manages for us, well, for the basin, and we're about 60%. So if we don't get more than our usual March, April, then, yep. Because we basically used all our storage last year, so, reserves last year, so. It's
So
gonna
don't
be-
plan a lot,
It's
is
gonna
what
be
you're
a
saying.
tough, it's gonna be a tough water year. It's gonna be a tough water year.
All right, so our next meeting is going to be March 23rd, is that right? Yep, planning commission. All right, anybody have anything else for the staff, or?
I was just going to ask one question about the Mountain Ridge Park. What's happening with the Mountain Ridge Park?
Mountain Ridge Park, we're working on a phase one to try to get it within the money that we have. Council asked us to look at a couple of things, give them a detailed budget. It'll be 2nd or the 16th when we get back to them
Okay,
of March.
thank you.
Is this where I say, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second that, third that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.